All right, we're recording the first ever episode of The Coach and the Counselor. We have Vince Thompson on here. Before we get started with Vince, and I wanted to just kind of give a background as to why we're starting The Coach and the Counselor. As an owner of Operation Player Assist, we were invited on, or I was invited on to the Caught Up podcast with Randy Kay. And Randy is a organizational owner of the Rogue softball organization in Arizona. He's also a high school softball coach and does a lot in the softball world. And when he had us on his podcast, obviously we were talking about Operation Player Assist and all the great things that Operation Player Assist is doing to help kids stay in sports, offset the cost of sports in general, and helping out coaches and teams and organizations. But one of the things that Randy kind of kept pushing me on was, what else is it that you do? And, at first I was like, well, what do you mean? We've already raised over $1 million for families and for coaches and for organizations. In my brain, I was thinking, man, well, what else do we need to do? But, I really took that to heart. And I think I understood what he was saying is, everyone on our team, on our team, meaning Operation Player Assist, we've all coached, we've all played. We all, or a lot of us, have kids in sports right now at various levels, some at very high levels. Some have been in, directors of player development positions. Some have played minor league baseball, professional baseball, or other professional sports. And so I get what he was trying to say. And from that, I took that to heart. And that's the reason why we started our podcast series. This is the first one, The Coach and the Counselor. And so what we're going to try to do here is, have great conversations with, not just people in the baseball and the softball world, but everyone in the sporting world, both that have, that are playing, currently playing, going off to go play, coaching currently, running organizations, coaching at the high school level, at the college level, and the professional level. And then in addition to that, also at the educational level, I started my career in education. My wife's currently a counselor in a middle school. And so hence the, the tie into, the coach from the athletic standpoint, but the counselor side of things when we also start helping at the school level, at the educational level. So long tie in there, Vince, but welcome aboard here. Welcome to the first ever episode, and I appreciate you being our guinea pig.
Well, thanks for having me. First time caller, long time listener.
Did you ever listen to Mad Cow back in the day? Maybe Mad Cow might have been a Chicago thing. I don't know how national it was, but I think that's what a lot of his people said.
Oh yeah, he's still.
Well, Vince, let's start with you here first, and let's kind of go back. It might go back a long ways for you, but let's give me your history in sports in general, and specifically in coaching as well.
Okay, sports has always been a huge part of my life. I always call it all three, but I played football, basketball, baseball growing up. Turned into baseball, basketball player. Got to play a little bit in college before I got hurt. I got hurt to fall ball freshman year of baseball. I was a D2 school. I had basketball pain a little bit, baseball pain a little bit. Getting hurt in baseball made the basketball coach mad because I wasn't available. But the injury ended up being something I couldn't ever come back from. So it took, that was hard for me. Trying to figure out life without without sports, really. It was hard.
Yeah.
So getting into coaching, I think, was an easier transition. It took me a while to figure that out. Kind of without sports, I did a few things, try to fish or hunt or do different things, but I'm always drawn back to sports. And it was mostly my kids coming of age to start playing that pushed me into the coaching realm.
And so what did you first start coaching? What was your first sport that you started coaching?
I want to say it's probably baseball. At the time, my son was 4 years old, and the little rec center in our town wouldn't let him play anything. He's a big kid. He's always been a big kid. He looked older at the time, and I was trying to get him into something. He was just one of those kids that, before he was walking, he loved balls and he was throwing stuff and catching stuff. And, his first birthday, I bought him that little hoop, that play school hoop.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
was making, he was making hoops in the, as he was learning to walk.
yeah,
So I was trying to find them, and the rec center would not let him play. They said he's not old enough. The insurance won't cover him. So I went to the next town and asked them, and he said, "All right, we'll let him play, but you have to coach." And that's how it started. I'm still friends with him. His son played football at Notre Dame. I think he was in the portal. I think he's got 1 year left. He's going to play at Cal. I'm still friends with him to this day. But he started it by forcing me to, coach, a bunch of 6-year-olds
yeah.
in a T-ball.
It's funny, like we could probably go down a crazy path, and I don't think we should do that in this one. But daddy ball gets a lot of negative connotations to it. But the reality is, we need guys like you that plenty of people come up to guys like us to say, hey, we need you to coach. And so I'm
Yeah.
sure if you're like me and if you're like my wife, there was plenty of times where we tried like heck not to coach, but just kind of kept getting reeled in to coach. So I hate the negative connotation that goes along with that term, but we definitely need more parents involved in sports, because it's really one of the reasons why we started Operation Player Assist. It's just really hard to keep good coaches in sports right now.
It
All
is.
right.
You're right. I mean, you keep getting sucked in to that, and I was really conscious of that, trying to avoid the daddy ball. If you talk to either one of my kids, they'd tell you that they got the other version of it. They were the first ones to sit, or they were the first ones to get yelled at. But you're right. That is a whole topic in itself. But you're also correct that we need as much involvement as possible. I've been lucky to be around some really good people and good organizations that have helped the kids and the coaches.
Yeah, so let's kind of segue into that then. You got reeled in like many of us. You started coaching a 4-year-old version of your son that was a long time ago.
Yes.
What happened from there? And tell us about the other sports that you coached, other teams that you coached, and then maybe at the same time, what were some great memories that you had of coaching those, some of those great teams that you were on?
Sure. Well, just it started building on itself. My wife grew up the same way, and we just wanted to raise our family that way. So everything we did was, what season is it? So we get both kids involved. It's basketball season. Okay, let's do basketball. And then I ended up coaching. At some point, I coached both kids in basketball. My son a lot more, but my daughter some in basketball. My wife coached, all the way through, and it just kept building. So, and we're competitive people. Kids are competitive. So we started moving from, the basic stuff to the more competitive stuff, and just trying to find as much as we could and as much as they wanted to do. And, maybe we pushed too hard at times or whatever, but I just think it's a great way for kids to grow up. That's why Operation Player Assist is so important. We want to keep these, like you said, we want to keep these kids in sports, and I think keep them in there as long as possible. There's so much they can learn, and life lessons, and you can talk about all that. I just think it's so important that sports are so important in people's lives. There's other ways to do things, and sports aren't everything. We kind of probably treated it too important at times, but I just thought it was a great way for our family to go through the kids growing up, and we're always together. We were always together. There are negatives. We probably haven't had a real vacation that didn't involve, a tournament or, something in 15 years. But I just thought it was a great way great way for the kids to grow up, and great way for our family to be together.
That's awesome. I'm gonna interrupt you because I still want to hear about some of those great teams that you coached, and I know you for sure you've coached some really high level kids. Before we get back into that, let's take a step back, because you talked about kind of the role that parents play, and so maybe not just for yourself, but what do you feel like the role is that parents play in successful familyhood, a successful coach, in youth leadership. Let's just take it from there. Like what's the role parents play in successful youth leadership?
I think parents, I don't know how to say this without coming across negative, but they're so important to these kids. It's good that the coach can be a mentor, or someone else could be a mentor to these kids, but they need it from their families. They need to feel that from their folks, grandparents. They need to feel that connection with them. So I think it's huge. I also think when the parents are involved, it's important that the coach or the mentor be on the same page and communicate. It's better for the kids all around that way, I believe.
Great, great. And then so you kind of talked maybe a little bit of this balancing act of right of I can kind of feel it in your tone of you're trying to balance motivating your own kids, although motivating other kids without adding perhaps a little bit, too much pressure, too much of a heavy hand. How did you or how do you feel like you should, or a parent or a coach should successfully have that balancing act?
There is definitely a balancing act. I felt like at times I went too far. In hindsight, I can see that. With the push, and like you said, my son's still playing, so I've stepped back a little bit and just input here and there and kind of let it go. And I've asked him just recently. I asked him, are you getting sick of it? It's hard. It's a grind. It is hard, and he just still loves it. So I think at the end we probably did it correctly, but I know at times I pushed too hard, pushed both kids too hard, whether it was school, work, different things. But I think overall it's important. I think that's something missing nowadays is there's not enough push. I see that there's just a lack of focus, you know, motivation in like I said, I don't want to get negative or political,
Yeah,
but just just lack of go. Let's go.
no, and I think the proof's in the pudding a little bit. You have two, really successful kids that are, graduating from colleges with degrees and still, Ty still playing the sport that he loves. And I think that was, he didn't say it that way, but I think that's a crucial part of it. Clearly there's a love instilled in the game. Yeah. There was times, you probably had a bit too much pressure, maybe not because he still loves it. He's still doing it. He still wants to do it. So I think you've probably done a lot of things right. So let's go back to those some of those top teams and some of those top players. Like what are some of your fondest memories as a coach, not as a parent, but as a coach and coaching some of those teams?
My fondest memories, like I said, I ended up coaching all three sports, football, basketball, baseball at some point between, baseball starting, like I said, real early, all the way through getting a bunch of kids through into their, and turning them over to the high school coaches.
Mm.
Um, my favorite memory is that baseball team we had. We were the Brighton Bighorns, and we were a legit town team. There was a couple of kids, but primarily all through that, those kids all would have gone to the same high school. We were run through the little baseball association there in town. It's not a huge town; it's growing now, but I'm probably the most proud of that. I know there's three D1 kids still playing. There's a couple other kids playing at other levels off our original kind of core group. Super proud of them. Love to watch them. I just heard one of them, he hit 97 2 nights ago.
Nice.
The other one, Brock, the other one, he was up to 95 this season. Ty's been up to 93. I can't take credit for much of any of it. It's more, the families that it's, freaky genetics, but I like to think that we put them in good spots and got them in the right places at times.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely a massive role that genetics plays. But what was the big horse race just a month ago? Um,
Preakness, I think, was the last one.
yeah, I don't remember which one it was, but it was literally every single horse in that race was a descendant of um,
Yeah, the same
Oh
horse.
man, yeah, I'm drawing a blank on it, but that just kind of shows. It kind of shows both to me. It shows both, right? Is one is in order to play at a really high level, genetics is going to play a role, right? I have
Yeah,
always said, if you're going to play in the NBA, everyone knows you kind of need to be between 6'2" and 7 foot. Not that you can't be 5'2" and make it to the NBA, but your odds are definitely stacked against you. There's only been two and
for
three
sure.
maybe in history, right? Spud Webb and Muggsy Bogues, the two that pop off my head. But so genetics plays a huge role. But just because you're 6'6" doesn't mean that you're automatically going to make it to the NBA. There's,
Nope.
Michael Jordan's kid, never made it. So, um, yeah, you had some freakishly athletic kids that had some great genes, but the role I think that you played in their development, and the role that their parents played in their development, from the mental side of things and from the tenacity, the work ethic, and all those other things that we've alluded to is crucial in this as well.
Yeah, I was
Um,
blessed with a great group of kids, a great group of parents for the most part. That's a talk about another full show topic would be the sport parent. But um,
Yeah. 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 I mean, I'm looking forward to having more conversations like this. So, all right. So the Brighton Bighorns, the one of the biggest and best teams, I think, the team that I coached years ago, we probably played you at some point. I would guess that
definitely,
we did not beat you. We, my team that I had coached, we were the scrappy, athletic, small, underdeveloped, undersized kids. We played above our pay grade, and we won a lot of games. We had a lot of fun, and we too had some kids that are still playing, not just baseball, but other sports at high
yeah.
level. So that's been exciting too. Um, what do you think is kind of like going back and taking a step back now and kind of knowing what you know, and if you were to say what are some of the things that, as this sport has evolved, or sports have evolved in general, what are some of the good things that are coming out of this evolution of sports, and what do you think a couple things that maybe aren't as good, or even bad?
On the bad side, I think focusing on one sport so early is not great. I think as far as my athleticism, I know it was enhanced by doing other things, you know, by playing, throwing, um, quit throwing and go do something else, those kind of things. So I don't think that's great. But on the other hand, the training and the development is so far above what, you or I would have ever imagined. I was lifting the, tiny little weights in the garage. Our sons get professionally trained. It's nuts. And you can see, I was watching the College World Series last night, and they just keep bringing in 100-mile-an-hour dudes.
Yeah.
Boom, boom. That guy didn't work out. Here's another one. That kind of stuff is just because of, you're able to maximize what a human being can do
So I'm going to
much
push
better
back
than.
though. So there's clearly a level of specialization though, right? Is like, in order to be
There
that
is.
superhuman College World Series level kid, right? They're big, strong, fast, explosive. They have unbelievable training, unbelievable levels of nutrition. Like, kind of the list goes on. So there has to be, I hear, the early specialization conversation all the time. Like, too many kids are specializing too early. And I too agree with that. My kids played many sports for a long time, but at some point, right, there has to be a decision that says, all right, I need to pick my lane, and I need to get really, really good at my lane, because nowadays, if you,
It's-
maybe if you don't, it might be a little too late. What's your thought on that?
Well, I think you're right. That's where it's gotten to, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but you have to make a decision pretty soon. And and I could argue maybe it's a little early, but you have to compete at those high levels. If you're just content to play through high school and call it, or maybe you know play somewhere at school for a little bit, but if you want to be a high level guy, you do have to figure it out and focus on one, and then one or two, and then just go. And like you said, it's amazing. people think I'm crazy, but Ty's home for the summer. First summer of no sports, probably since he was 4 years old. Um, he needed it. He'd thrown a bunch of innings. He needed the time off. But I'm still getting up. He's got a summer job. I'm still getting up and making him like 6 eggs. I mean, we are just constantly, and I've been doing that since he was like 12 years old,
Yeah.
so, we are much more focused. I was eating Captain Crunch before practice probably.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and then the training, the training, the specialization in the training is crazy too. So, I think there are positives and negatives to all of it, but those are the biggest changes I've seen.
And if so, I guess not to put you on the spot, but knowing what you know and your level of knowledge in the sporting arena, if you were to kind of draw a line in the sand, if say you were to do this all over again, sounds like you would absolutely have Ty and all the kids that you work with playing multiple sports, maybe for a certain amount of time. At what point do you think a decision needs to be made to either to narrow it to a couple or to narrow it to the one that they want to do for the rest of their career?
I'd like to see him get into and start puberty, for the boys. Um, the body's changed so much, I know you saw that, too. We've had, and then you have the early puberty versus the late puberty. Let their bodies kind of settle in and see what happens would be probably my, hindsight advice. Let that happen a little bit before you make major decisions. It's one thing to say, little Johnny's 9 years old and he's the best shortstop I've ever seen. Um, you know, that's great, but he might grow 10 inches and end up being 6'8", and now he's a first baseman kind of situation. Or now maybe he's a basketball guy, so I like to see the bodies, let their bodies change and kind of go through that a little bit before the big decisions are
So
made.
sounds like sometime around high school-ish age, and it could be different for
Yeah,
every kid, but 15, 16, 14, 17 range.
yeah, that 14, 15, 16 range, I think, is when
Yeah.
I think there's still time too. There's still time to, like you said, okay, we're going to focus up. I've been spending all this time, and we did go through that a little bit with Ty. Was we'd spend all this time, and we're never, it's kind of a what's the saying, the jack of all trades, master of none
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
situation. So we're actually still fighting that with Ty a little bit. He two-wayed for so long that he hasn't had the pitching instruction that a lot of people think he has, or probably should have had, to be at the level he's at.
So yeah, let's talk about that. Ty, made a decision to just play baseball at a certain point, but your family's dilemma, maybe not just Ty's, but your family's dilemma was, should he continue to hit or just be, PO, a pitcher only?
Yeah.
So do you feel like you played a role in that for, the to the detriment
Probably.
possibly?
Probably. Yeah. I mean,
So like,
kind of the writing was on the wall at times.
yeah,
I didn't want to see it. I, you know, I don't know. With him, he hits this. I told him this the other day. I said, I finally came to a realization, about your being just a pitcher only. I said, he hit balls that very few humans could hit. Honestly, but he didn't do that often enough. So that's what I told him.
right.
I said, that's why I kept pushing, because I'd seen this stuff. I mean, honestly, there are very few people on earth that could probably do that, but he just didn't do it enough. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Well, good. Yeah. And then what sort of role, let's talk about the role that the parent can play. Like, let's just generally talk about that, because I think at some point, right, as a parent, you're paying a lot of money. And this can segue into Operation Player Assist, right? Is you're paying a lot of money to have him coached by, hopefully someone who's played at a really high level. Let's call, it's experts or experts in
Sure.
their area. So you're paying money to have them coached by experts and to get expert opinion from those coaches and those instructors. Um, what would be your advice now in hindsight to parents about when to put them into a program like that, and then what role should the parent play once you've decided to have them around professionals?
Well, my situation got to the point where I felt like all these kids, they were getting so good, and they were growing, and I felt like they passed me up. Like I knew, like, I need to find them better coaching, and
Mhm.
better opportunities. So that's when we started looking and letting the boys go. We tried to keep them together as long as we could. But then, we felt really good in letting them go. Um, you're not kidding. It is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Everyone knows that. We joked, the baseball scholarship, they're changing it now, but, even just a few years ago, a 25, 35, 40% scholarship was great for a baseball player. We always joke that we've paid for, college 2 or 3 times before they ever get
Yeah.
there. Um,
Right.
but it's important. It is important for development. I think it's important for every coach to realize, what point do you need to let your kids go and go to someone better, go to someone more
Yep.
knowledgeable.
Yep. And then talk about your role that you played and the kind of the interaction back and forth between you and Ty, let alone you and your family and you and other, people in the organization that you played for on making a decision to where to go to college. And what did you learn from that whole process?
And that was tough. Our situation was a little different. You went through it, with COVID happening, and it changed the recruiting landscape completely. There's, one of the regional games, they were some kid was up to bat, and the announcer says he was a 7th year senior. He's 26 years old. Um, we ran into that with the recruiting stuff. Um, Ty's recruitment, I won't get into. That was no fun. Some of the other boys, had had a lot of opportunities, um, that either worked out or didn't work out. Like the one that's Athen, who's down at Dallas Baptist, it worked out great for him. His brother plays basketball down there. He's got an older brother that plays basketball down there. He was down there visiting his brother, and looked over at the baseball field, and they were having a camp. So he grabbed his glove, went over there, pumped 92 when he was 15 years old, and they signed him up. So, there's different versions. Brock's recruiting was a lot longer. You helped with that some. And he ended up in a spot he thought he wanted to be. It didn't work out, but he's in a new spot that his brother played at, and his brother was an All-American there. I think Brock has a chance to do the same thing.
Right. All right. And so then now everyone's off in college having, success or very various levels of success. What's the best advice that you ever received that you feel like you can pass along to other parents or coaches that are in your situation or you've been in your situation?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I would motivate, instill confidence, and then get out of the way. Um, do what you can as a parent. That's kind of my coaching thing. Prepare them, get out of the way, and let them go. Um, as a parent, I would say, stay out of the way a little bit as well, but do anything you can, financially, um, as a parent, support things like that, and do anything you can for them. And the kids will tell you when they're done. My daughter was a high level volleyball player, and she just got to a point where I'm done, and you can get it. You completely understand it. Um, so give them every opportunity, and then stay out of the way and support 'em.
Support. Great. It's great. I mean, it's great advice. I'd say, something very similar to that. All right. So now, all right, you're done coaching. Um, you get to just enjoy watching your son play from the stands, and you started working for Operation Player Assist. So tell me, why you joined Operation Player Assist. Tell me, kind of the high level of what Operation Player Assist and what you're doing specifically for the company.
So I joined because I thought I could help. I think my experience makes it, some I can be someone that a younger coach, a younger version of me, could ask questions to. I feel like I can help the coaches. I feel like I can help the families. I know we can help the kids. And like I said, my goal is to keep kids in sports as long as they want to be in as many sports, whatever they want to do. Um, Again, this is show my age. I'll get like let's get off my lawn kind of guy, but get off your phones and your tablets and get outside and play something.
Yeah.
That's my approach to this. Right now I'm working as an account executive. I'm just working with coaches, organizational leaders, anybody that'll pick up the phone and listen. Just trying to help them raise money. This is so simple. This is the other thing. Any of those older coaches know, if you mention the word butter braids or, I don't know, we did that Chili's breakfast a couple times. I hated that. Anything with inventory and, the coach or the team mom, or that's usually the coach and the coach's wife end up
Yeah.
doing most of it anyways. This setup with Operation Player Assist, you avoid all that. You can completely avoid all the inventory, all the messing around. It's a simple process. It's set up easily. It's digital, so it fits in with everyone younger than us. They're used to doing everything on the phone. Anyways, it's just a simple, easy thing that I think I feel like sometimes I was thinking about this earlier. What's the Jerry Maguire movie where he's yelling at Cuba Gooding Jr., help me help
Yeah.
you. That's how I am
Yeah.
sometimes with these coaches. I'm like, just trust me on this. I've been where you've been. Let me help you.
Yeah, and I think that just ties back and almost like a full circle in this conversation. I think that really ties back to what Randy was trying to get to us is like, you guys have an awesome opportunity. We've been there, we've done that as parents and coaches and development and on all those other levels to say, man, just trust us here. Just listen to us. Just give us a
Yeah.
shot. Because not only can we help, ease the burden of the finances, which is inevitably our goal, and easing the burden at all levels, parents, kids, families, coaches, organizations, teams, we can help with the burden of that, but we can also provide some advice as a parent, advice as a coach. I'd love to personally be more involved with some of the teams that I work with of, doing a Zoom with the families, whether it be recruiting, whether it be, kind of just having the conversation that we're having right now, help
Yeah.
promote their business. There's a lot of things that we can do. So again, I really appreciate Randy, kind of keep plugging it, but that's, the reason why we're here on the coach and the counselor and why we have Vince on here today to talk about all the great things that we can do to, to help the teams and the organizations that we work with. Have you had opportunities to do that yet with some of the guys that you're working with?
Oh, a little bit. It's funny. I've had some questions about development questions, tournaments. What do you think of this? Because one of ours. This is if we've got time. There's a funny story. I had Ty and a couple of his teammates from that original team up at the house, and we went fishing. I got back from fishing and was making them dinner, and we were just talking about old times. And all three of these boys are currently playing college baseball, and they've been through the circuit. You were there for a lot of it. There's
Yeah.
not an opportunity that they hadn't been given. From Jupiter to traveling the country, doing the whole thing. And I asked them, "What was your favorite? What was your favorite?" And they all answered. When we were like 10, 11, 12s, we went to Steamboat every year for that Triple Crown tournament. That was our favorite tournament. That was our favorite time. So that makes you feel good. So I'm always telling, especially the warm weather baseball coaches, come try that Steamboat tournament in June. It's a lot better than playing down south in the humidity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the point of, they're, regardless of wherever they play in college or however long they play, they have some unbelievable memories. And it's, I always appreciate that when they're, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old and they're still talking about, just being a kid and having fun.
Yeah.
I'm sure they can't tell you if they went 0 for 4 or 4 for 4, but they can definitely tell you, the great times that they had as friends. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that gets lost in translation a lot, and these highly competitive youth sports nowadays. Um,
I was gonna tell you
but
say I was gonna say too, my daughter's running our social media because she made fun of me. So they said it looks like a 50-year-old man's running this. So, um, she's doing that now. For Operation Player Assist. That's a good way to reach out if you do have questions or you want some advice or anything like that. Reach out through our socials. Um, Tony will put those out at some point for y'all to have. But reach out and my daughter will be the intermediary, but she can get you in contact with us, and we'll be more than happy to help you with anything.
a true family affair. That's great. I got one last question for you. So,
All right.
talk about full circle. I hear you're coaching again.
I did. I got pulled out of retirement a couple weeks
What?
ago
So
or a
tell
month.
me, I gotta hear this. Tell me about
It
what
is
you're
full.
coaching and all about it. I want to hear about this.
It is full circle. Um, my wife and I, after we got both kids in school, got her talked into moving to this little town that I lived. I was spent like kindergarten through 7th grade, I think, in this little town up in the mountains in northwest Colorado. It was Mayberry for me. I loved it. Um, and we had to move, family, job situation with my parents or something, and we had to move. I've been trying to get back since, just trying,
Uh-huh.
and I eventually, finally, I wore my wife down. It took me almost 25 years, 30 years, but I got her worn down enough that we made this move. So I'm back in this little town. It's 2,500 people. Still, a lot of the people that were here when I left are still here. It's it's one of those places. It's nice.
Yeah.
Um, but they just the T-ball team, the Meeker
Coaching
Cowboy
T-ball.
T-ball team, yes,
Nice.
needed a coach, so they knew my background a little bit and asked me to coach. And it worked out great because, like I said, Ty's not playing this summer, so he's home. So it's me and Ty back doing T-ball together. It's more like herding cats, as I'm sure anybody that's done it knows.
So
But
tell me,
it's fun.
tell me what a typical T-ball practice looks like. You guys running foul poles? You doing long toss? Like, what is that? What does it
Well,
look like?
I forgot how bad it, like in my head I pictured Ty and Brock and those guys, we're making plays and throwing people out at T-ball. There's no chance for this group on that. I think they're maybe a little younger too. I think my youngest is 3 and my oldest is 5.
Oh
Um,
boy, yeah, that's
so the first practice,
truly
I thought,
different.
okay, let's throw the ball and catch the ball and see who can throw and catch. And that turned into no one can throw and catch yet. So, it turned into breaking them into groups because you can't have the whole group together. Or it turns into a wrestling match and someone will get mad. So
Yeah.
break them into groups, and we'll work on ground balls. We'll work on just throwing the ball, and then have a group hitting the ball off the tee, and then we'll break them in half and just scrimmage. It seems like the best way to keep them occupied is to scrimmage. And we work a lot on running the bases. There's still a couple of them that'll run the wrong way or forget to run, things like that. We're still hoping to. We're 2 games in and haven't made an out yet. So um,
Yes.
tonight we got a game tonight. So my goal is to make an out. It's
Oh,
fun. It's fun though. It's kind of
little
neat.
accomplishment.
I'd forgotten how those little kids get attached to an adult that cares. It's pretty neat. Pretty neat.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're going to make an impact, sort of regardless. So that's great, and the value of what you're doing. Um, can you see? Can you look at how many kids are on the team? 10.
It depends on the day, but it's 12 to 15 sometimes.
Okay. So is there clearly, it's going back to the genetics thing. Is there 1, 2, 3 kids where you're like that kid right there, he's gonna make it someday?
Yeah, there's 2 of them that are going to be players for sure.
That's good.
For sure.
That's
I mean,
good.
you can just see it. You can just see it right away.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. You do this. You're in this business long enough. You can pick the winners. Pretty
Yep.
much right away. If you can, and that's the beauty of sports, right? Keep them out of trouble. Keep them engaged. Keep them active. They're much better spending all this time, dedicating themselves to this craft than going off and doing things that, might get them in trouble. So I think what the work that you're doing is great, both on and off the field. On the field, helping now T-ballers out, off the field, helping many different teams and organizations and families across the, really the world at this point. Not just
Yeah.
the United States, of offsetting the cost of sports through Operation Player Assist. So appreciate everything you're doing. Any final thoughts for us? Any parting wishes,
No,
parting
I
thoughts?
appreciate you. I appreciate you making me do this. You know, this is not my style, but hopefully it worked out, and people can get something out of it. And feel free, like I said, hit us up on socials or through our websites. We'd love to speak to you about fixing your fundraising problems. It's ridiculously easy, and it's the new way. I wish we'd have had this. I just wish we would have had this.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be as hard as people make it, and
No.
we can discuss things like fundraising fatigue, and have the expertise in this area, in this realm, to really help you out. So operationplayerassist.com is the website. You can go there, look at some videos, some reviews, some testimonials. Reach us, any one of us. Just fill out a form, and we'll contact you. And then obviously we're on social media, as Vince suggested there, the Facebook, X, and also on Instagram. So looking forward to for hearing from any of you that are interested in helping offset the cost of sports for your families. And Vince, I really appreciate you being our guinea pig in episode 1 of The Coach and the Counselor.
Thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
Bye.